So, good day everyone. My name is Erica May Algarma, and I'm with Carla May Mendoza and Gemma Rose Kalingasan. We are going to discuss about Chapter 10, that is about group influence and opinion leadership. So, this chapter focuses on how other people and people that surround us influence our purchase decision. This chapter considers the way how the preference of each individual molded by our group membership. So, pag-usapan muna natin kung ano nga ba ang reference group. So, a reference group is an actual or imaginary individual or group conceived of having significant relevance upon an individual's evaluations, aspirations, or behavior. So, sila yung mga tao or group of individual na nakaka-apekto or nakaka-influence sa isang consumer when it comes to their behavior or evaluation sa isang certain product or services na gusto nilang i-purchase. Although two or more people are normally required to form a group, the term reference group is often used a bit more loosely to describe any external influence. At ang mga influence na yun ay normative influence, comparative influence, and formal versus informal groups. So, dun muna tayo sa normative influence. So, the social power of reward and punishment that produces behavioral compliance but may not produce any private acceptance of the position advocated. So, ito yung reference group na tumutulong para iset at i-enforce yung fundamental standard of conduct. Halimbawa nito ay family influence. The next one is comparative influence. So, dito naman, the group does not attempt to set or enforce rules of your behavior, but only to serve as a standard you choose for comparison. Dito na naapektuhan yung pagdidesisyon natin about sa isang specific brand or activities. Example nito ay yung club na kinabibilangan mo. And then, the formal versus informal group. So, kapag small, informal groups are more common and important to us because of their high normative influence. So, kapag large naman, formal groups naman ay tend to be higher in comparative influence. So, mayroong tatlong forms of reference group influence. Yun ay ang informational, utilitarian, at value expressive. So, when we say informational, an individual do an observation and collecting information depende sa gusto nilang bilhin. Halimbawa, sa sasakyan, they seek first brand-related knowledge and experience from his or her colleagues or friend na mapagkukunan ng reliable information. Sila yung mga taong may karanasan na dun sa product na yon. Halimbawa, brand ng sasakyan. Halimbawa na lamang ay Toyota at Mitsubishi. Kunyari, nagtanong ka sa kaibigan mo na gumagamit ng Toyota or Mitsubishi. Kumbaga sinabi niya na ay wag mong gamitin yung Toyota kasi mas maganda yung engine ng Mitsubishi na sasakyan. So, syempre, dahil reliable information naman yung nakuha mo sa kaibigan mo, kumbaga paniniwalaan mo na siya. Kumbaga, yun ang sasakyan, yun ang bibilhin mo kasi meron na siyang experience or knowledge sa paggamit ng certain product na yon. The next one is utilitarian. Dito naman sa utilitarian influence, ang purchase decision ng isang tao ay naaapektuhan depende sa mga taong nakakasalamuhan nila. Let's say for instance, sabi ng family member mo, bilhin mo yung Bear brand na gatas. Dahil yun din ang binibili niya para sa mga bata, para sa mga anak niya. So, dito pa lang, it has an impact na sa choice ng isang individual sa pagkukonsume ng isang product. And the last one is value expressive. So, dito naman, this group influence makes the consumer feels na yung nagpo-purchase ng certain product or brand na yun ay hinahangaan or respected by other people. So, minsan din parang pakiramdam ng mga consumer na kapag na-purchase nila yung product, magkakaroon sila ng characteristic na she would like to have. At dito, they would feel that purchasing that certain product will enhance their image as a human being. Kaya, ikukonsume nila yung product na yon. membership versus aspirational reference group. So, ang ibang reference group ay nagko-consist ng mga personality na kilala na ng mga consumer. Ang iba ay kinukompose ng mga tao na ina-admire ng karamihan, kagaya na lamang ng mga artista. Kaya hindi nakakapagtaka kung bakit karamihan sa mga marketing efforts that specifically adopt a reference group appeal concentrate on highly visible. Halimbawa, yung mga widely admired figures such as well-known athletes. So, this aspirational reference group comprise idealized figures such as business people, athletes, or performers kasi kilala na nga sila ng maraming tao. Kumbaga, mas madaling makaka-influence sila sa purchase decision or consumer behavior. Ang membership reference group naman, sila yung mga ordinary people whose consumption activities provide informational, social influence, and it is affected by several factors including propinquity, mere exposure, and group cohesiveness. So kapag sinabi nating propinquity, kapag nababawasan ang physical distance and nadadagdagan ang opportunities for interaction, relationship are more likely to form at yung physical nearness ang tinatawag na propinquity. Mere exposure, we tend to like person or things kapag madalas natin itong nakikita at ito ang tinatawag na mere exposure phenomena. So sa pagdalas ng kontak ng isang tao or bagay, kahit unintentional man ito, it could still help to determine one set of local referent. And the last one is group cohesiveness. So, ito yung level naman kung saan ang member ng group ay na-attract sa isa't isa because of sharing of the same interest and value of their group membership. At ito yung tinatawag na cohesiveness. As the value of the group to the individual increases, so too does the likelihood that the group will consumption guide decision. Positive versus negative reference groups. Reference groups may exert either a positive or a negative influence on consumption's behavior. So, kadalasan, ang mga consumer, they try to be consistent sa behavior na gusto nila kasi yun yung tingin nila na ine-expect ng group na kinabibilangan nila. Merong consumer that they try to distance themselves from other people or groups. So, sila yung tinatawag na avoidance group. A consumer may carefully study the things that the disliked group wanted and needed dahil he or she would try to avoid that para hindi siya ma-identify na kabilang dun sa group na iyon. The motivation to distance oneself from a negative reference group can be as or more powerful than the desire to please a positive group. Kaya maraming advertisement na nagpapalabas ng mga undesirable person using a competitor's product para ipahatid sa mga customer or consumer na iwasan yung ginamit na product nung tao na yon. Halimbawa sa mga beauty products, nagkaroon ng hindi magandang reaction yung balat ni customer or ni consumer sa binili niya. So yung competitors nila, gagamitin yung way or advantage para i-avoid ng mga possible consumer yon kasi hindi nga maganda yung naging epekto dun sa gumamit. So, gagamitin nila yon as an opportunity kasi andun na yung tendency na iiwasan na yung product na yun kasi nga merong hindi naging magandang epekto. So, papasok sa kanila yung opportunity na sa kanila magko-consume ng product or magpo-purchase ng product yung mga possible customer. Virtual communities. In ancient time, most membership reference group consisted of people who had face-to-face contact. Now, it is possible to share interests with people whom you've never met and probably never will. Especially nowadays na nagiging technical based na ang lahat ng tao sa palitan ng kanilang information with one another via chats man yan or emails or video calls and many more. So, ano nga ba muna yung virtual community consumptions? So, it is a group of people kung saan nagaganap ang online interaction with one another na nakabase sa shared interest nila at kaalaman about sa specific consumption activities. So, virtual communities come in many different form. Yun ay ang multi-user dungeons or MUD, rooms, rings, and lights, boards, and blogs. So, dun muna tayo sa multi-user dungeons. So, ito yung environment kung saan ang mga players ng fantasy games ay nagtatagpo-tagpo kahit through games lang. So, ngayon, it refers to any computer-generated environment kung saan nagkakaroon ng social interaction ang mga player through the structured format of role and game playing. So, this kind of virtual communities provides a completely new social, collaborative shared experience where basically in the internet community base. Halimbawa na lamang ng MUD is yung nauuso ngayon na Mobile Legends o yung tinatawag na MOBA. So, dito nagkakaroon ng social interaction ang mga player o ang mga tao through the use of computer-generated environment. So, dito, habang naglalaro sila, pwede silang makipag-usap through chat sa ibang mga player. Habang naglalaro, pwede rin nilang i-open yung mic nila para mas makausap nila ng malinaw yung mga kasagpi nila o yung member nila dun sa game. So, kahit na walang face-to-face interaction, kumbaga, panibagong environment yun. Kung saan, parang nagkikita-kita na rin sila through games with the help of that kind of environment. So, the next one is rooms, rings, and lists. So, this include Internet Relay Chat or IRC, otherwise known as chat room na common naman nowadays. And rings naman ay mga organization na about sa mga homepages at ang list naman ay ang group of people on single mailings who shared information. So, boards naman. Online communities can be organized around interest-specific electronic bulletin boards. So, naglalaman ito ng mga specific information, date, and subjects, depende kung anong nilalaman nito. Kung makikita natin sa mga daan, especially sa Maynila, naglalakihan dun yung mga bulletin boards na nakadisplay. Halimbawa ay boards for musical groups, kapag may mga upcoming concerts, films na ipapalabas, mga sasakyan na bagong ilo-launch o kaya naman ay yung mga pagkain sa fast food restaurant, which is very common. And the last one is blogs. So, it is the newest and fastest growing form of online communities. And it is also called weblog. So, hindi po ito yung blog dun sa YouTube. Iba po ito. So, it is a website na naglalaman ng mga online personal journal at nakakapag-develop dito ng napakadaming followers among internet users. Kasi dito, ang isang user sa website ay pwedeng ilabas yung random thoughts nila tapos ipopost dun sa website na yon. So, after posting dun sa website na yon, pwede silang makabasa ng mga random thoughts din which has similar content dun sa kanilang ipinost. So, dito pa lang nagkakaroon na ng virtual interaction kasi kumbaga nag-share nga kayo ng same interest kahit na through social media or website. So, virtual community are still new phenomena. Pero yung epekto nito sa preference ng isang individual sa certain product ay napakalaki lalo na ngayon na halos lahat ng tao ay nakabase na sa technology. Kumbaga makikita mo na lahat sa internet. Kagaya na lamang ng mga feedbacks ng ibang individual sa certain product na kinukonsume nila. So, dun pa lang, kahit hindi naman kilala nung isang tao yung nag-post ng feedback niya, it's either negative o positive feedback man yun, maaapektuhan yung kanyang preference sa isang product. The intensity of identification with a virtual community depends on two factors. Una, kapag may malapit sa self-concept ng isang consumer, yung isang activity, the more na i-continue niya yung pagiging active member sa certain community. Second naman is kapag malakas yung hatak o yung influence ng social relationship ng isang tao with other member of the virtual community, mas lalawak yung involvement nila dun sa group nila. And combining these two factors creates four distinct member types, and those are tourists, minglers, devotees, and insider. So kapag sinabi nating tourists, they have lack of social ties sa group pero na-maintain nila yung passing interest nila dun sa certain activities. Kapag naman minglers, pinapanatili nila yung strong social ties nila among the group pero hindi sila ganong kainteresado sa activities. Kumbaga, dun lang sila nakafocus na magkaroon ng strong social ties. Kapag devotees naman, pinapakita nila yung strong interest nila dun sa activity pero kokonti lang yung social attachment nila dun sa group. At kapag insiders naman, parehas nilang pinapakita yung strong social ties at yung strong social interest dun sa activities. Brand communities and tribes. So, brand communities is a set of consumers who share a set of social relationship based upon usage or interest in a product. So, unlike ng other community, ang mga member ng brand communities ay karaniwang malayo sa isa't isa. Kumbaga, malayo ang kanilang tirahan o location sa kada member at madalas lang silang magsama-sama kapag may mga organized event na tinatawag na brand fest. So, dun sa brand fest, dun na i-enhance yung brand loyalty ng mga consumer kasi dun sila nagkakasama-sama to celebrate their loyalty sa isang specific brand. So, ang understanding sa consumer tribes naman ay kagaya ng sa brand communities. Because, when we say consumer tribes, they share emotion, moral beliefs, style of life, and affiliated product. So, sila yung mga group of people who share a lifestyle and who can identify with each other through a shared loyalty sa isang activity or product. So, ang challenge naman sa tinatawag na tribal marketing or yung linking a product to the need of a group as a whole. So, yun nga, ang challenge is yung magkaroon ng connection ng isang produkto dun sa need ng grupo as a whole. Halimbawa na lamang ay yung mga tribes na nahihilig sa mga sasakyan, kunwari na lamang ay sports car. Ang gagawin nila, magtitipon-tipon sila to celebrate such cult products since pareho sila ng mga interest when it comes to sport car products. So, doon sila magkakaroon ng connection with one product. Tribal marketing is about social connectedness and linking value rather than the product or the brands. So, ang tribal marketing, nakapokus siya para mas magkaroon ng strong social ties yung mga tao or consumer na nagsishare ng same interest sa isang certain product. The power of reference group. So, ang types of reference group power ay binubuo ng 7 power. Yun ay ang social power, referent power, information power, legitimate power, expert power, reward power, and the last one is coercive power. So, dun muna tayo sa social power. Social power refers to the capacity to alter the action of others to the point na kaya mo to make someone else do something kahit na willing sila o hindi na gawin yun. Kumbaga, you have the power over that person na kahit gusto man nila o hindi yung product na yun, magagawa mo silang mapasunod. The next one is referent power. So, kapag referent power naman, halimbawa, hinahangaan ni consumer yung qualities na meron ng isang tao o grupo. He or she would try to imitate those qualities in a way na gagayahin niya yung referent behavior ng ina-admire niya. Halimbawa, kung paano manamit, yung style, or yung brand na damit na ginagamit, nung ina-admire niya ay i-imitate niya. Pati na rin ang leisure activities. Kunwari, that person loved to play basketball or any ball games, the consumer would try to do that too. At napaka-importante nito sa marketing strategies kasi dun papasok yung pag-consume ng mga product na ginagamit ng tao na ina-admire ng isang consumer. So the next one is information power. A person can have information power simply because may alam siya na gusto ding malaman ng ibang consumer. Those people na nagtataglay ng information power ay may kakayahang maka-influence sa opinion ng isang consumer because of the information he or she have. The next one is legitimate power. Kadalasan, power is granted to people by virtue of social agreement. Halimbawa na lamang ay yung power na naibibigay sa mga police, customs, excise officers, and other armed forces. Ang legitimate power ay nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na superiority sa tulong ng uniform kasi it helps to communicate trustworthiness. Halimbawa, sa bangko, pumasok si customer, tapos nakita niya yung employee doon na nakasuot ng uniform, tapos may name tag siya na teller. So, pagkakatiwalaan siya ni customer, at dito, mai-enhance yung authority bilang isang worker. Kasi nakaka-influence yung uniform niya sa power na meron siya. At yung power na yun ay pwedeng gamitin ng mga marketers to influence consumers. Halimbawa, sa mga commercial or ads na pinapalabas sa TV, ang mga models nila ay kadalasang nakasuot ng, halimbawa, nurse uniform kasi about sa gamot yung ads. Nakakadagdag impact yun sa legitimacy ng presentation ng isang produkto. Expert power. Sa expert power naman, it is about possessing specific knowledge about a content area. Kumbaga sila yung mga expert in a certain field. Halimbawa, gusto mong bumili ng sasakyan kaso wala ka masyadong alam sa pagbili ng magandang quality, so ang tendency, mag-a-assign ka ng someone who has the knowledge about sa sasakyan para ma-evaluate niya yung product kung okay ba o hindi yun in your behalf as a consumer. Another example, 'di ba kapag may gusto tayong bilhin, halimbawa, mas i-consume natin yung product na nakita natin o napanood na inirecommend ng isang expert, kunwari na lamang ay doktor, kasi doktor na yung nagsabi na okay gamitin, kumbaga recommended dahil expert siya doon pagdating sa field na yon. Reward power. Kapag ang isang tao or group ay may kakayahang magbigay ng positive reinforcement, that entity will have a reward power over a consumer to the point na yung reward ay binavalue or desired ng isang consumer. The reward may be tangible. Halimbawa, ang isang company nagbigay ng reward sa isang employee by raising his or her salary. It can be also intangible. Halimbawa, social approval or acceptance doon sa group of people na gusto mong mapabilang. And the last one is coercive power. So, kapag coercive power naman, kadalasan effective lamang ito in a short-term period of time. It does not tend to produce permanent attitudinal or behavioral change. It refers sa pag-i-influence ng isang tao. It's either physical or social intimidation. Halimbawa, intimidation sa personal selling and campaign. So, dito, pinapakita yung mga negative consequences na pwedeng mangyari kapag hindi mo ginamit yung product na yun. So, dun pa lang sa part na yun, parang matitreaten na si consumer na hindi i-purchase yung product because of the negative consequences na maaaring mangyari.
So, ang next naman nating tatalakayin is conformity. So, ano nga ba ang conformity? Conformity refers to a change in beliefs or actions as a reaction to real or imagined group pressure. In order for a society to function, its members develops norms. So, ang norms refers to informal rules that governs behavior. So, meron tayong dalawang types of social influence. Una is normative, which is person conforms to meet the expectations of a person or group. Ang isang member is umaayon sa grupo dahil sa gusto nila na tanggapin sila or magustuhan sila ng ibang members ng group. Second is informational, conformity that occurs because of the group's behavior is taken as evidence about reality. If other people respond in a certain way in an ambiguous situation, we may follow their behavior because this appears to be correct thing to do. Bukod pa rito, ang isang tao is sumasali lamang or nagiging bahagi ng isang group just to obtain information or para makakuha ng impormasyon sa kung ano ba ang tama. Next naman is yung mga factors that influence conformity. So, meron tayong 5 factors which are cultural pressures, fear of deviance, commitment, group dynamics or group unanimity, size and expertise, and last is acceptability to interpersonal influence. So, ang una natin is cultural pressure, which is wherein they put pressure on the person through social norms to adjust with their demands and behave like other person in the society. Next one is fear of deviance. The individual may have reason to believe that the group will apply sanctions to punish behavior that differs from the groups. So, ibig sabihin na ang isang member ng group is pwedeng magkaroon ng dahilan para maniwala na ang sinalihang grupo ay maaaring magbigay ng parusa sa sino mang maiiba sa paniniwala ng kanilang pangkat. The third one is commitment. The more a person is dedicated to a group and values membership in it, the more motivated he or she will be to follow the dictates of the group. Fourth one is group dynamics or group unanimity, size, and expertise. From the word unanimity, size, and expertise, ibig sabihin, habang dumadami ang bilang ng isang pangkat is dumadami rin ang mga nagnanais na magkaroon ng kaalaman about dun sa grupong sinalihan nila. Last is acceptability to interpersonal influence. This trait refers to an individual's need to identify or enhance his or her image in the opinion of significant others. This enhancement process is often accompanied by the acquisition of products the person believes will impress his or her audience and by the tendency to learn about products by observing how others use them. So, ibig sabihin, gumagamit sila ng mga kilalang tao upang ipromote ang isang product. For example natin is si Pia Wurtzbach na gumagamit ng mga front row products. That's why marami na rin ang bumibili nito and nalalaman din ng mga consumers ang tungkol sa isang produkto sa pamamagitan ng pag-o-observe nila sa ibang consumers and kung paano nila ito ginagamit. So, yung mga against naman dun sa process na yon is tinatawag na role relax. Role relax consumers are the individuals who are aware of social expectations but decide how to act and what to buy based on their standards. They prefer to listen on their own in deciding what's desirable, what is right, and what is appropriate, instead of following interpersonal influence. Mas gusto nila na sila mismo yung magde-decide base sa kanilang standards nang hindi nakikinig at sumusunod sa mga maimpluwensyang tao. Next is social comparison theory. 3 fundamental propositions. People have a drive to evaluate their opinions and abilities. In the absence of objective basis for comparison, this need can be satisfied by social comparison with other people. Such social comparisons will, when possible, be made with similar others. Social comparison theory asserts that we look to the behavior of others to provide a yardstick about reality as a way to increase the stability of one's self-evaluation. Consumers are selective about whom they use for benchmarks. In general, people tend to choose a co-oriented peer or a person of equivalent standing when performing social comparisons. Next is compliance and obedience. The way a request for compliance is phrased or structured can make a difference in acceptance. First is foot in the door or door-to-door selling. So, tinatawag din natin itong mga tactical request. So, ang foot in the door is make a small request first, then make a larger one later. Experienced salespeople know that they are much more likely to make a sale if they first convince a customer to let them into the house to deliver their sales pitch. Once a person has agreed to this small request, it is more difficult to refuse a larger one, since the consumer has legitimized the salesperson's presence by entering into a dialogue. For instance, if a salesperson working at a shop can persuade a passerby to accept a sample of a product, such as a chocolate, they will be more likely to convince them to take the time to enter the shop and browse the full range of chocolates on offer. So once na-engage na sa conversation yung target person, mahihirapan na itong tumanggi sa alok ng salesperson gaya ng panonood ng demonstration ng product sa kanya. Next is lowball technique. A person is asked for a small favor that turns out to be costly. Is a persuasion tactic in which an item is initially offered at a lower price than one expects in order to get the buyer to commit. Then the price is suddenly increased. Full range of chocolates on offer. So once na-engage na sa conversation yung target person, mahihirapan na itong tumanggi sa alok ng salesperson gaya ng panonood ng demonstration ng product sa kanya. Next is lowball technique. A person is asked for a small favor that turns out to be costly. Is a persuasion tactic in which an item is initially offered at a lower price than one expects in order to get the buyer to commit. Then the price is suddenly increased. So for example, Miss Susan goes to her local car dealership to buy a car. So may nag-offer agad sa kanya ng isang SUV na nagkakahalaga ng $14,000. So dahil sa tingin niya at akala niya na ganun nga ang presyo is, pumayag siyang bilhin ito, tapos nung bumalik ang sales manager para kunin ang mga paperworks ay nagbago bigla ang presyo nito at naging $6,000. Dahil na rin sa mga upgrades na na-install sa sasakyan. So, yun po ang example ng lowball technique. Next is door in the face. Make an extreme request first, then a reasonable request later. The persuader attempts to convince the respondent to comply by making a large request that the respondent will most likely turn down, much like metaphorical scamming or a door in the persuader's face. So, ang door in the face is para din siyang foot in the door in which a persuader begins with a small request and gradually increases the demands of each request. For example, is may friend ka and humiram siya sa'yo ng pera and medyo nalakihan ka dun sa hinihingi nito. So, wala kang magawa kundi tanggihan ito, pero humiram pa rin siya sa'yo, but yung mababang halaga na and hindi ka na makakatanggi pa. At dahil sa nakahiram na siya sa'yo ng pera, iisipin na ng kaibigan mo na pwede niya na yung ulitin dahil pumayag ka na dun sa una niyang request. Group effects on individual behavior. With more people in a group, it becomes less likely that any one member will be singled out for attention. People in larger groups, or those in situations where they are unlikely to be identified, tend to focus less attention on themselves, so normal restraints on behavior are reduced. You may have observed that people sometimes behave more widely at fancy dress parties, at hen or stag parties or partying on. For example, charter holidays that they would normally do. This phenomenon is known as the individualism or the individuation. So the individuation or the individualism is a process in which individual identities get submerged with a group and a individualism is a process in which individual identities get submerged with a group and a special situations. Additionally, the individuation refers to when a person becomes part of a crowd or groups and then begins to lose their individual identity. They become less aware of self and who they are as an individual. So example nito is gangs, cults, and large mobs of people. Pero hindi naman lahat ng the individuation is masama. For example nito is mga malalaking charity events. So if the people or a single person feel that they are part of the group, may tendency na mag-donate sila ng pera at pwede pa nila itong taasan. So, the large donation inspires others to do the same. Next is social loafing. Social loafing describes the phenomenon that people do not devote as much to a task when their contribution is part of a larger group effort. For example, sa isang restaurants, waitresses are painfully aware of social loafing. For an instance, people who eat in groups tend to tip less per person than when they are eating alone. There is some evidence that decisions made by groups differ from those that would be made by each individual. In many cases, group members show a greater willingness to consider riskier alternatives following group discussion that they would if members made their own decisions with no discussion. So dito napapasok ngayon ang tinatawag nating risky shift. Kumbaga, mas preferred ng iba na gawin yung bagay na sinang-ayunan ng lahat and willing silang mag-take ng risk kaysa sa sarili mong desisyon. Several explanations have been advanced to explain this increased riskiness. One possibility is that something similar to social loafing occurs. As more people are involved in a decision, each individual is less accountable for the outcome. So, tinatawag natin itong diffusion of responsibility. Kumbaga, nagiging irresponsible ang isang tao sa mga consequences sanhin ng mga maling desisyon nila. Another explanation is termed the value hypothesis. In this case, riskiness is a culturally valued characteristic, and social pressures operate on individuals to conform to attributes valued by society. So next natin is decision polarization. Evidence for the risky shift is mixed. A more general effect appears to be that group discussion tends to increase decision polarization. Ibig sabihin, ang isang group of consumers is nagde-decide between risky choice or conservative choice before sila mag-start ng discussion. Next is shopping behavior. So, ang shopping behavior is nagbabago rin when people do it in a groups. So, halimbawa, kapag magsha-shopping ka mag-isa, syempre kadalasan is nakaplano na kung ano ba yung balak mong bilhin. Pero nagbabago ito kapag may kasama ka. For example, kasama mo yung squad mo or best friends. So, di ba may impluwensyahan ka nila na kahit wala sa plano mong bilhin yung bagay na yon, mapapabili ka talaga. So, these effects are due to both normative and informational social influence. So, kaya yung mga retailers is ina-advise din nila na mag-shopping ang mga customers or consumers by group. So, last is bandwagon effect. So it is the tendency of an individual to acquire a particular style, behavior, or attitude because everyone else is doing it. As more people come to believe in something, others also hop on the bandwagon. So, ibig sabihin, ang isang consumer is sumusunod lang sa kung ano ang nasa uso and sa kung ano ang madalas niyang nakikita sa ibang tao. Parang gumagaya lang sa kung ano ang nakikita niyang ginagawa ng iba. For example, when it seems like everyone is adopting a certain diet, so people become more likely to try the diet also. Or kaya sa elections, kadalasan na nangyayari is ang boto ng isa is nakadepende sa kung sino ang mas pinapanigan ng marami. At yung sa tingin nila ay mananalo dahil sa maraming nakasuporta. So yun po ang tinatawag nating bandwagon.
Now, let's proceed to the word of mouth communication. So, nagkaroon na ba kayo ng conversation sa isang tao kasi nagandahan kayo sa suot niyang damit at tinanong niyo siya kung saan niya ito nabili? O kaya naman ay sinabihan ka ng kaibigan mo na pumunta sa restaurant na kanilang kinainan sapagkat sulit yung ibabayad mo dito? O kaya naman ay sinabihan ka ng kamag-anak mo na huwag pumunta sa salon na iyon sapagkat pangit yung ang service doon? So, kung naranasan nyo na ito yung tinatawag nating word of mouth communication. Much information about products and services is actually conveyed by individuals on an informal basis. So, ang word of mouth communication nga ay yung pagpapasa natin ng information about sa isang product or service patungo sa ating mga kakilala, kaibigan o kamag-anak. Kasi nga tayo as a customer, once na naka-experience tayo ng kakaiba or nasarapan sa isang product o maging napangitan man o kaya naman ay nasatisfied sa isang service, hindi natin namamalayan ngunit na ipapasa natin ito sa ibang tao. Naikukwento natin ito sa kanila upang maging aware din sila. At bakit nga ba daw nangyayari ang word of mouth communication through informal basis? Ito ay dahil nga nagaganap ito sa simpleng huntahan or usapan ng mga tao na yung interest nila sa isang product ay nagre-reflect na sa kanilang daily conversation. Unlike dun sa formal means ng promoting a product such as commercials, TV shows, magazines, and newspapers, dito sa word of mouth communication kahit sinong ordinaryong tao, mapabata man, matanda, or dalaga na may gustong ibahagi about sa isang product. Next, it is a free advertising triggered by a customer experiences. So dito, hindi ang mga business ang nagpo-promote ng product, kundi ang mga consumers na mismo ang kusang magre-recommend nito sa iba once na naka-experience sila ng kakaiba dun sa product na kanilang binili. So free siya kasi customers na mismo ang nagpo-promote, hindi na kailangang bayadan pa. Dagdag pa rito, ang word of mouth communication ang isa sa pinaka-effective na marketing method. Kasi nga, bukod sa free na siya, mas pinagkahatiwalaan at pinaniwalaan pa siya ng mga tao. Kasi nga, yung information na naibabahagi sa kanila ay galing mismo sa isang customer na naka-experience ng product at service. Nagmumula siya sa kanilang mga trusted na kakilala. Now, let's proceed to the factors that encourage the word of mouth communication. So, product-related conversation can be motivated by a number of factors. The first one is, person is highly involved with the product. So, those person are the one who have interest and get excited when talking the product. So, ang halimbawa na nga lang nito ay yung mga avid fans. Katulad ng fans ng NBA players, ng fashion, mga collectors ng miniatures, or even yung mga taong mahihilig sa makeup. Kaya if ever man may nagtanong about sa kanilang interest, madali na nila itong nag-share sa iba. Kasi nga, highly involved sila dun sa product. Kaya dun sa kanilang sharing, dyan pumapasok yung word of mouth communication. Second, person is highly knowledgeable about the product. So, ang best example nga nito ay yung mga sales staff. Dahil nga trabaho nila ito, syempre, hindi naman sila magbebenta if wala silang sapat na kaalaman about dun sa product na kanilang minamarket. Halimbawa na nga lamang ay Glutalay po yung kanilang ibebenta. So, para maengganyo nila yung customer, sinasabi nila yung mga health benefits and other information about sa product. So, through their sales talk, nagkakaroon ng word of mouth communication between the seller and the consumer. Next, person has a genuine concern for someone else. So, factor din siya ng pagkakaroon ng word of mouth communication kasi nga tayo as a customer, once na may na-experience tayong hindi kaya-aya, isinishare natin ito sa ating mga kakilala upang hindi rin sila mapahamak or masayang yung perang kanilang ibabayad. The last factor is a person may be uncertain about a recent purchase. So dito, tayo sa customer, may pagkakataon na yung binili natin ay hindi natin alam kung bakit natin binili. Meron din times na hindi naman natin alam kung paano siya gamitin. So sa pagtatanong natin ito sa ibang tao, nagkakaroon ng word of mouth communication. Na-share nila yung knowledge nila about sa product at nagiging aware naman tayo dito. The next is the dominance of word of mouth communication. The first one is guerrilla marketing. It is a way to market our product or service in a different manner or outside the box. Marketing a product different from a competitors. So dito naman, ito yung way ng pag-advertise ng product in an expected way or different from the others using surprises or unconventional techniques. So dito lumalabas yung pagiging creative ng mga marketers. Isa din siya sa pinaka-effective na marketing method kasi nga agaw pansin siya. Mas tumatatak ito sa isipan ng mga consumers. So I have here some examples of guerrilla marketing. So the first one ay yung billboard kung saan pinakita nila ito sa isang kalsada. So kahit sino mang dadaan dito, kita-kita agad siya. Then the next one, the McDo. So they promote their logo and product sa isang pedestrian lane. Then the last one is KitKat kung saan pinakita niya ito sa isang bench. Next is the viral marketing. It is a style of promotion that relies on an audience to generate the message of a product or service. Marketing is considered viral when it reaches the point where it is being shared by the public at large rather than its audience. So dito naman nakadepende siya sa consumers if magkiklik ba ito sa kanila or kung ano yung magiging interpretation nila sa isang advertisement. So ang pinaka-main medium naman sa pagpopromote ng product dito is through social media or the internet such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and even TikTok. So effective din siyang marketing method kasi nga if naging click siya sa masa, consumers na mismo ang kusang mag-share nito. So kino-consider siyang viral if yung na-reach nito ay hindi lang yung kanilang target audience, kundi ang sambayanan o ang karamihan. Naging usap-usapan ito or patok sa mga tao. So I have here some examples of viral marketing. The first one is the Magnum, and then the Wendy's, and then the last one is the KFC. So kung titingnan nyo yung logo nyo, naging rearrange na siya, naging FCK. So may story behind this kasi daw noong February 2018, nagkaroon ng crisis sa KFC sa UK kasi nagkaroon sila ng problema sa supplier ng kanilang manok. So dahil dito, ilang branch nila ang nagsara. At as a result, marami sa mga consumer ang nagreklamo. At meron pang iba nagsabi na paano daw magiging KFC ang KFC kung wala ng chicken. Kasi nga KFC stands for Kentucky Fried Chicken. At marami pa silang mga alma ang narinig mula sa mga consumers. And nung naayos na nila yung problema nila sa kanilang supplier, umisip sila ng panibagong way para makuha ulit yung trust ng mga mamimili. So ito yung naisip nila, magkaroon ng isang bucket at lagyan ng logo which is naging rearrange, naging FCK. And dun sa baba dun, may nakasulat dun na we're sorry, a chicken restaurant without any chicken is not ideal. Thank you for bearing with us. So yun yung naging marketing strategy nila upang makuha uli ang loob ng mga mamimili. Negative word of mouth. So ito naman yung mga harsh comments and bad feedback na naipapasa ng isang consumers patungo sa ibang tao. And as a result, is weighted more heavily by consumers than a positive comments. Kasi tayo bilang tao, kadalasan sa atin, once na may narinig tayong negative comment about sa isang tao or any product, mas tumatatak ito sa atin kahit na mas madami siyang positive na nagawa. Kagaya ng lamang sa isang product. Kung na-experience natin yung pagkain natin ay may langor or dumi, hindi na natin siya kakainin kahit gaano pa ito kasarap. Kasi nga yung thinking natin, marumi na siya. It has been shown to reduce the credibility of a firm's advertising. At dahil nga minabalitaan na tayong rumors or negative feedback, ang nangyayari nababawasan yung trust natin sa isang brand or business na kapag nag-promote ulit sila, hindi na natin ito pinagkakatiwalaan. So the last impact of negative word of mouth is that it may influence consumers' attitude toward a product as well as their intention to buy it. So dahil nga may bad image na ang isang product, na-impluwensyahan nito ang consumers when it comes to their buying decision. So ang tendency, hindi na muli silang bibili ng product na ito. Rumors are the chief form of negative word of mouth. So mga haka-haka daw, sabi-sabi o chismis ang pinagmumula ng negative word of mouth. Rumors often result in boycotts of products, companies, or services. Pero ano nga ba yung boycotts? So it is to refuse to buy a product or do business with a company. Sa madaling sabi, ito yung pagtangging tumangkilik o pagprotesta. So ang rumors daw ay nagre-resulta ng hindi pagbili ng mga consumers na isang product o hindi pagtangkilik ng isang serbisyo o kaya naman ay hindi pagsang-ayon ng isang organization na makipag-business sa isang kumpanya. So napakalaki na nagiging epekto ng rumor sa mga businesses.
So now, let us discuss first about opinion leadership. So ano nga ba muna yung opinion leaders? Everyone knows people who are knowledgeable about products and whose advice is taken seriously by others. Sila ang tinatawag na opinion leaders. So pag sila na yung nagsalita, paniniwalaan kaagad sila ng ibang tao kasi alam nila na that person know what he or she is talking about dahil meron siyang kaalaman about doon sa certain product na tinutukoy niya. Sila yung mga tao na madalas na nakaka-influence sa attitude at behavior ng ibang tao. So opinion leaders are extremely valuable sources for a number of reasons, and those are, they are technically competent and have expert power. That's why they have the ability to convince consumer dahil tulad ng nabanggit ko sa expert power kanina, pinoposes nila yung specific knowledge about dun sa isang content area. They also have pre-screened, evaluated, synthesized product information in an unbiased way. Kaya meron sila nung knowledgeable power. Unlike ng mga commercial endorsers, ang mga opinion leaders ay hindi nagre-present ng interest sa isang company or business. Mas credible source sila ng information dahil wala sila nung tinatawag no axis of green o yung personal opinion about something na gusto mong tanggapin ng tao kagaya ng mga commercial endorser. They are socially active in their community. Ang mga opinion leaders ay interconnected sa kanilang community. They are likely to hold offices kagaya ng mga community groups and clubs. At ito rin yung way nila para mas maging socially active sila sa labas ng kanilang bahay. As a result, kadalasan nagkakaroon sila ng legitimate power dahil sa social standing na mayroon sila since nga active sila at connected sa kanilang community. They are similar to the consumer in values and beliefs. Kaya napuposes din nila yung referent power. Kahit nasabihin na ang opinion leaders ay merong specific purpose pagdating sa mga interest nila at expertise in a product category, mas convincing pa din sila. And last, they are often among the first to buy new products. So, andito yung risk factor kasi sila yung unang nagtatry. With the help of this, mababawasan yung doubt ng isang consumer about sa isang product na wala masyadong courage na i-take yung risk, unlike the opinion leaders. Next, we have extent of an opinion leader's influence. So, when marketers and social scientists initially develop the concept of the opinion leaders, ina-assume nila na mayroong specific na influence people sa isang community ang nagkakaroon ng malakas na impact sa isang group members' attitude kasi we have different levels of confidence and knowledge in a certain area. Kaya meron talagang mag-e-excel and that people could bring a huge impact nga sa attitude or behavior ni consumer. Dahil dito, nagkakaroon ng assumption about generalized opinion leaders. Very few people are generalized opinion leaders. Someone whose recommendation are sought for all types of purchases. Konti lang ang tao na mayroong capabilities na maging expert sa isang field kasi hindi naman pantay-pantay ang understanding ng bawat tao sa isang field. So more likely, opinion leaders are either monophoric or sila yung mga expert in a limited field only. They can be also polymorphic or sila naman yung mga expert in several fields. So, research on opinion leaders generally indicates na kahit mayroong mga opinion leaders na nag-i-exist sa maraming product categories, yung pagiging dalubhasa nila or yung knowledge nila on a particular field is nag-overlap across in similar categories at hindi yun maiiwasan. Bihira lamang makahanap ng isang generalized opinion leaders. Merong opinion leaders na para sa home appliances, so mas magsaserve siya doon sa may similar function for home cleaners at hindi sa cosmetic kasi hindi naman nila expertise yon. So even opinion leaders who are polymorphic tend to concentrate on one broad domain, kagaya na lamang ng electronics or fashion.
Opinion leaders versus other consumer types. Opinion leaders absorb information from mass media and in turn transmit data to opinion receivers. Opinion leaders, who are also early purchasers, have been termed innovative communicators. Opinion leaders may or may not be purchasers of the product they recommend. Opinion leader purchase a new innovative product of their interest. They speak of their experience as acts of behavior that the audience should emulate. Kumbaga sila yung bumibili ng makabagong products and then sasabihin nila yung experience nila or opinion sa product na yon para malaman ng mga consumers kung maganda ba yung product or hindi. Opinion leaders are also likely to be opinion seeker. They are generally more involved in a product category and actively search for information. As a result, they more likely to talk about products with others and to solicit other opinions as well. So, ang isang opinion leader is sumahanap ng ibang opinion leader and so pag-uusapan nila ang isang product para makakuha sila ng impormasyon. They ask for clarification of the values, attitudes, and opinions of the group members. The market maven. People who are actively involved in transmitting marketplace information of all types. For example, sa pagsha-shopping, ang isang market maven is aware siya sa kung ano ang nangyayari sa marketplace. Alam niya kung paano at kung saan siya kukuha o makakabili ng products. But it doesn't mean na palagi silang nagsha-shopping kaya alam na nila ang gagawin. They're just into shopping and staying on top of what's happening in the market. Last is the surrogate consumers. Is a person who is hired to provide input into purchase decision. Ibig sabihin, siya yung nagbibigay ng advice or ng influence sa purchase decision ng iba.
Identifying opinion leaders. So gaya nga na nabanggit kanina, opinion leaders are those individuals or organizations that are experts or knowledgeable about sa isang product, service, or company. So sila yung mga trusted na mga consumers when it comes to their buying decision. So dahil nga central ang opinion leaders when it comes to consumer buying decision, marketers are quite interested na mahanap kung sino ba yung mga influential na individual para sa kanilang product strategy. First one are the professional opinion leaders. People such as doctors or scientists who obtain specialized information from technical journals and other practitioners. So, ang mga professional opinion leaders naman ay yung mga bihasa or eksperto in a certain field. So, sila yung may mga pinag-aralan. Sila karaniwan yung target ng mga marketers kasi nga, if sila mismo nag-endorse ng product, mas nakaka-attract ito ng mga consumer. Dahil galing na nga ito from a doctor prescriptions at mga bihasang tao ang nag-i-endorse ng isang produkto. The next one is the consumer opinion leaders. So, sila naman yung mga everyday consumer o pangkaraniwang mamimili. And they typically influences 5 to 10 consumers. Sinasabi rin na mas mahirap daw silang malocate kasi nga, unlike dun sa mga celebrity na kilala ng karamihan, itong mga opinion leaders ay yung identity nila is unknown o ilan lamang yung mga nakakakilala. And consumer opinion leaders help marketers target their product-related information to appropriate settings and media. Halimbawa na nga lamang ay kung hinahanap ng mga marketers ay yung mga financial opinion leaders. So through their research, they found out na yung mga consumer daw na ito ay involved in managing their own finances and tended to use computers to do so. Sila din yung mga tao na mahilig magbasa ng libro or manood ng TV na may kaugnayan or devoted sa financial issues. So, kung saan sila nakaklasify, nagre-reflect ito kung ano yung kanilang interest at kinahihiligan. Dagdag pa rito, if gusto ng mga marketers na hanapin yung mga technical opinion leaders, so syempre, dun sila pupunta sa mga taong bihasa sa paggamit ng computer o mga IT genius. The third one is the self-designating method. In this method, they simply ask individual consumer whether they consider themselves to be an opinion leaders. So, para matukoy ng mga marketers kung sino nga ba yung mga opinion leaders, ginagawa nila yung method na ito. Kung saan tinatanong nila ang bawat isa kung kinukonsider ba nila yung sarili nila as a opinion leaders. So, ina-assess nila ang mga consumers through a survey. So, nagpo-provide sila ng mga questions. And sinasabi rin na hindi daw reliable yung ganitong method kasi nga daw merong iba na nagse-self-proclaim o meron namang iba na influential na tao ngunit tinatago yung kanilang identity. So para ma-make sure nila kung sino nga ba yung mga opinion leaders, meron silang alternative method kung saan nagsaselect sila ng mga group members or mga key informants at sila yung hinihingan nila ng opinion kung sino sa tingin nila ang mga opinion leaders, kung sino sa palagay nila ang mga influential na tao. The last one is the sociometric method. This traces communication patterns among group members and allow researchers to systematically map out the interactions that take place among group members. So, para malaman nila kung sino nga ba yung mga opinion leaders, ang ginagawa nila ay ini-interview ang mga participants ng bawat grupo. Tinatanong nila kung saan ba sila pumupunta or kumukonsulta para sa product information. And through this, nalalaman ng mga marketers kung sino nga ba yung source of product-related information. At ito daw yung pinaka-precise and effective method upang matukoy ang mga opinion leaders. Pero it is very hard and expensive daw kasi it involves very close study of interaction. Kaya kalimitan siyang ginagawa sa hospitals, prisons, and army bases, and sa lugar na isolated from social networks. So, this is the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening to us and we hope na may natutunan kayo.